Perfect squares. So what is a perfect square? A perfect square is the product of an integer, a whole number, multiplied by itself, or squared. Let's take a look at all the perfect squares from 1 to 100. So if you take a whole number 1 and you square it, you get 1. 1 is a perfect square. If you take 2 and square it, or multiply it by itself, 4 is a perfect square. If you take 3 and square it, you get 9. 9 is a perfect square. 16 is a perfect square. 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. 25 is a perfect square. 6 squared, 6 times 6. 36 is a perfect square. 7 squared, 8 squared, 9 squared, 10 squared. I'm going to square all these numbers. These are all perfect squares. 81 is a perfect square, and 100 is a perfect square. So these are the perfect squares from 1 to 100. Now here's a neat little visual for perfect squares. 1 squared is 1. That's a perfect square. 2 squared is 4. 4 is a perfect square, and you'll notice it's making a square. 3 squared is 9. 9 is a perfect square. And 9 squares make a square. 4 squared, 16. 16 is a perfect square, and it also makes a square. 5 squared is 25. 25 is a perfect square. And 6 squared, 36 is a perfect square as well. They all make squares. Here's just a few more perfect squares. We've already done the ones to 100. 11 times 11 is 121. 121 is a perfect square. 12 times 12, 13 times 13, 169, 196, 225 is a perfect square. 15 squared is 225. 225 is a perfect square. Well, let's talk about what aren't perfect squares. 3, the number 3, is not a perfect square. It doesn't make a square. 5 is also, the number 5 is not a perfect square. It doesn't make a square. 6 is also not a perfect square, and the number 8 is not a perfect square. Let's make a perfect square right here. So what perfect square is represented below? Let's click here and find out. 16 is a perfect square, because if we put these all together, the number 16 would be represented by a perfect square. Let's see if I can do this really quickly. There we go. 16 is a perfect square. Now, here's a little activity. I'm going to take these numbers and drag it into one of two vortexes. The number 1, do you think it is a perfect square or not a perfect square? 1 is a perfect square. What about 3? You think it's a perfect square? Let's see if it is. No, it is not. 3 is not a perfect square. You can't make a square out of 3. Is 81 a perfect square? Well, 9 times 9 is 81. 9 squared is 81. So, yep, it's a perfect square. What about 49? Is any number squared 49? Is any number squared 49? Yes, 7 squared is 49. 49 is a perfect square. What about 90? Is some number squared 90? Nope. What about 16? Is some number times itself 16? Yes, 4 squared is 16. 16 is a perfect square. What about 15? Is there some number times itself that would give you 15? No, 15 is not a perfect square. What about 9? Well, 3 squared is 9. 9 is a perfect square. What about 100? Well, 10 times 10 is 100. 100 is a perfect square. Is 45 a perfect square? No. There is no number times itself that will give you 45. It is not a perfect square. What about 121? That's a tricky one. But 11 squared, 11 times 11, is 121. That is a perfect square. Here's an easy one, 36. 6 times 6 is 36, so that's a perfect square. Another tricky one, 169. Well, 13 squared. 13 times 13 is 169, so that is a perfect square. 196, that's really tricky. But there is a number times itself that will give you 196, and that's 14 squared. 14 squared. So 196 is a perfect square. And last, oh, we've got two more here. 27, there is no number times itself that will give you 27. That's not a perfect square. And last but not least, 225. If you took 15 and squared it, 15 times 15 is 225. 225 is a perfect square.